And a warm, hearty welcome to Beerfield Fantasy Football. I am your host at Hot BFF with two B's, Chris Hopper, coming to you from the St. Louis Metro East region of Illinois. As always, joined by my self-esteemed co-host, Dan Thury BFF. Dan,
what's going on, everybody?
what's up?
It's fun holiday year. You know, I'm stressed to a T, and I have now found a new hobby of buying sports cards. So nerding out over other things. I've shifted from gambling on games to just gambling on cards. So, yay.
Yep, that's something that you may start hearing more about on the show, especially as we move into the off season, because Dan needs an outlet to nerd out.
Dan loves to nerd out. Dan likes to get other people to nerd out, so it's a lot of fun.
Sure. Still no kids yet. Today's the due date, so that's why I'm here. So, still playing the waiting game there. I was starting to question if the Baltimore Ravens and Pittsburgh Steelers would play, or I'd have this kid first. So, turns out Steelers and Ravens played. That's about all the more we need to talk about that game. So, yeah, today's show, we're going to do some talking points from around the league, try to change it up here a little bit and just talk about some things that are worth talking about. It just so happens that most of them center around quarterback play, or quarterbacks in general. Speaking of quarterbacks, probably need to add another note to this. But before we do that, let's, as always, start off with what we're drinking.
What's fueling Beerfield?
Dan, what are you drinking?
First off, cheers to Darren. Darren, again, always dropping the cheers, buddy. Appreciate you. I am drinking 450 North's Banana Cream Cheesecake Slushy XL. For those of you who are not familiar with 450 North, they are a little microbrewery out of Indiana. I want to say it's some super small town.
It was. We went there. The brewery is literally in the middle of a cornfield.
Yeah, it's out of Columbus, Indiana. They're very well known for their corn maze. They get a lot of local breweries that come around from across the Midwest. I believe Triptych, which is one of the bigger ones in my area, and also Hopper's area, are also attend there. They're very well known for these slushy style beers, which is super, fruit, unfermented. You got to store cold, otherwise it'll blow up in your face. And they are so popular, they don't even need to distribute outside their own brewery, and they get hours-long lines for every new release every 2 hours.
They used to distribute it outside of their own brewery, and then there was the whole ABV fiasco.
Yeah, which for some it hasn't really hurt them. I mean,
because the way it was
their credibility.
It did. It didn't give him too much of a black eye because it seemed like it was an honest mistake. I don't know how you make that as an honest mistake, but it seemed like an honest mistake.
It's for those of you who aren't aware.
Yeah,
they used to put their alcohol percentage on their beer, and they took the percentage of the alcohol before everything started to re-ferment into the can, all the sugars from the fruits. So it went from a super high, it started to soak up all the booze. Mm-hmm. So they had it clocked in at around 8%, and when it's all said and done, about 3%. So,
yeah.
Pretty significant difference. If you drink enough of these, you kind of just figured that out. But they were blatantly lying on their cans, and you can claim they didn't know, but
yeah, I don't know how with science and as much science as you have to know to brew that you didn't know that when you add the fruit before you can it that you're diluting the alcohol. So,
yeah, it's gonna soak it all up.
Yeah, but they do good beer, and I don't want to take that away from them. And I'm glad it didn't, kill them entirely.
Exactly.
I did know that I hadn't seen them since then though because they pulled distribution when that happened. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they stopped for a while. They basically just decided to remove alcohol percentage.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think much has actually changed. This happened about a year ago. Not like it's super recent.
Yeah. All right. So I've got two things today. One of them is called Burton on Holt. It's an ale from Civil Life Brewing Company. English winter warmer, basically. Notes of caramel, marmalade, toast, toffee. That pairs well with old friends and crackling hearths. So it is designed to be a winter ale. Total Wine, because they suck, had it mislabeled, is a IPA, and then the notes made no sense. So it is a winter ale. But, interested based on the tasting notes to see what it is. And then I mentioned I had two things. So the other thing that I have going on is, my other project-ish is I am I'm an administrator of about a 5,000 member bourbon group down here. And as part of that group, we have advent calendars going on right now, which is basically 25 people sign up. We will then all make 25 sample bottles. We'll exchange those sample bottles. And then you have 25 bottles of bourbon, one to drink every day between the 1st and Christmas, like an advent calendar. I have two of those to do. So I have two advent calendars, 2 pours of bourbon that I have to drink every night between now and Christmas. So I am also drinking one of those as we go through the show alongside of this. They're normally blind tastings, and then we reveal the answer later, but somebody actually just put a label on the bottle. So this one's actually Little Book Chapter 4. And then the other other calendar that I'm running, I obviously know what's in there. So if I end up pouring that one, I believe it'll be Jim Beam's Old Tub, which I've had on the show before. But yeah, this is Little Book Chapter 4, so I figured I might as well give a bourbon review while I'm at it. But then I've been staring at the Civil Life for the last 2 weeks and really wanted to try it. So decided I was just going to do both. So there you go. I have Burton on Holt from Civil Life and Little Book Chapter 4 in the Glencairn. All right. We got some talking points to get to. So, I want to go ahead and I'm going to skip around here. I'm not going to go in the order that things are listed. So let's go ahead and talk about the Will Fuller news, since that is kind of the most late breaking and fantasy impactful. So Will Fuller on Monday was suspended for 6 games for PED use, which explains how he was finally able to stay healthy for a season, I think. So, just kind of break down what Will Fuller's suspension means for the Texans. What does that do for fantasy purposes? What does that do to Deshaun Watson?
So right now, obviously no Fuller for the rest of the fantasy season. Kenny Stills not on the team, I believe. But Cobb, IR. Basically, Brandon Cooks, Isaiah Coulter, the rookie, and
Kiki QT,
and a bag of potato chips. Actually, we started to see a little bit more of him play on Thursday, and that was probably wearing a tight end prospect Topper and I both loved last year. Hyper athlete, played 8 different sports in high school. He's raw. He didn't start playing football until his freshman year in high school. So still a lot to learn from him, but hyper athletic, and we've seen the tight end usage using to be. Just for Fuller, obviously Fuller's he's done it for the year. Dynasty wise, I'm trying to pull up his contract here to see what he's actually kind of worth from a dynasty perspective. God damn it.
Fuller is a free agent in the offseason, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. So yeah, I don't even see him on the list. I don't know if Houston will bring him back. It depends where they want to go. If they want to get younger at the position, they want to just kind of cut ties with some of the old pieces from the Bob regime. Fuller is going to get paid. Someone will overpay for his skills. We've seen how good he can be when he's healthy. Obviously, taking PEDs helped him stay healthy this year, regardless if he knew or not. What's also interesting is that someone else from the Houston team, who we all believe used the same doctor, also got popped for 6 games because they both didn't substance, was a part of the ban list.
Right.
It's unfortunate. Watson loses his top receiver. He still has Cooks. We're going to see if someone can step up, but this will obviously hurt his ceiling and more or less. It's hard to say. I mean, we've seen Cooks pop up.
Yeah, the big thing here is going to be who steps in for Brandon Cooks, because we expect Brandon Cooks just steps into the Will Fuller role. I don't think that Cooks has fallen off enough in his career. We've seen enough out of him to where I think that you still have a viable top wide receiver there in Brandon Cooks. Problem is what's behind that with Randall Cobb out and, Collet Waring, who you mentioned, still being a raw prospect, Kiki QT having his own health issues, and we like QT coming out of college, but he's an undersized slot guy. So, it's really, there's not going to be a whole lot that emerges there. You do have David Johnson designated to return from IR with his concussion. That could help out a little bit in the receiving game, but this becomes even more of just not enough weapons for Deshaun, so it does hurt his ceiling a bit. I do think Brandon Cooks is the guy that benefits the most from this. I'm not running out to grab Kiki QT or really anybody else. Brandon Cooks should not have been on waivers. Just means if you're a Cooks owner, sorry, if you've got Cooks rostered, you should be able to start Cooks with confidence basically from here on out. The other note on Will Fuller, he was suspended after week 12, 6-game suspension. You can do the math. That means he's going to be suspended the first week of next season as well, whoever signs him. So there aren't 18 weeks, and the Texans aren't making the playoffs.
Yep. It's going to, obviously, it shouldn't do too much to his redraft value.
No,
it's
it
not
won't.
like he's someone that's going in the third round of drafts. He'll still be a 5th, 6th round pick with value and upside. Always the risk of injury, just given basically. And it's also going to depend where he winds up if he doesn't sign with Houston and then he goes somewhere else.
Exactly. All right, enough about Will Fuller. Can't beat that pet horse anymore. Said I did there. Said a dead horse, pet horse. Get beautiful. It? Jacksonville has decided that they're going to continue with Mike Glennon at starter, even though Gardner Minshew's healthy. So, two things to really unpack here. One is the immediate impacts on that offense by sticking with Mike Glennon for the foreseeable future, and then what it means for Dynasty, because there's obviously a message there as well. I think for the immediate impacts here, what you saw this week is against Cleveland is you saw a lot of James Robinson. Now, DJ Chark was not playing. You did see Colin Johnson get some utilization on the outside, who was filling in for DJ Chark. So I'd expect DJ Chark is still serviceable in that wide receiver 2 range with Mike Glennon. But, Glennon going for 273 and 2 in a game where they were behind for most of it, even though they were in it at the end, Glennon doesn't breed a whole lot of confidence. Not that, Minshew was throwing the ball everywhere. So, does it move the needle a lot? Not really. You're still not looking to start Jaguars that aren't named James Robinson and DJ Chark when he's healthy. And Glennon is kind of a low-end stream at best.
Yeah, it's always going to be based on matchup. Glennon's been serviceable throughout his career. Obviously, he's rookie with Tampa Bay, 19 touchdowns, 9 picks. He played 13 games, averaged right around 200 yards per game. So there's no real ceiling to this, but there really wasn't. We loved Minshew. The fit just didn't seem to work. Minshew himself kind of just leveled off. The offense just staggered. Have a team that's constantly rebuilding and flux. Like, you can't expect much. I'm hoping Minshew can get a chance with another team, bounce back, and we see some more serviceable weeks, potentially seasons from him. But as of right now, for dynasty wise, stock is tanked.
Well, that's exactly.
I guess good luck.
That's exactly the point. I think that Jacksonville's headed straight for a rebuild, and they signaled that when they cut Fournette in the offseason. You've got a piece there in DJ Chark. I don't know that Doug Marrone gets brought back, and I think this team goes straight for rebuild. You brought some young talent in on offense. You're going to have to continue, or on defense, you're going to have to continue to build around that. You've got some pieces on on offense in Chenault and DJ Chark. James Robinson as a UDFA was a good thing to uncover. And really, the line play hasn't been terrible, but they're definitely going to need a quarterback, and I think they're going to be in the market for a quarterback. They need to go draft one. And you can still, if you want to retain Minshew, I think that you can still use Minshew as a bridge player. But right now, what they're signaling is they do not believe that he is the long-term answer. Now, because a 1-10 team has no reason to play Mike Glennon. That's the other thing I don't understand. You're a 1-10 team. You have no reason to play Mike Glennon. You obviously didn't like what you saw out of Jake Luton. So, it would make more sense to continue to let Luton try to figure it out or continue to develop Minshew if he is truly healthy than it is to play Mike Glennon.
I mean, I guess for this point, it's the same reason why Miami decided to keep with Fitzpatrick for Josh Rosen last year. It made more sense to see what you have in second-year quarterback that you traded a second for. And I think it's this coaching staff trying to play out their best player, best in quotes. And
they could be trying to save their jobs.
And then, exactly, they're trying to block Brian Flores this entire situation. This is looking like a very deep quarterback class in 21. Obviously, you have two high-end quarterback prospects in Lawrence and Fields so far, with a lot of other names that kind of prop themselves up in that space. There's a real chance we could see between 5 and 6 first round next year. So it's a good move by Jacksonville. Kind of positions himself with, Chark and Chenault that as two core pieces for the receiving spot. I want to believe that they're going to buy into Robinson as kind of this, three piece at running back, but I don't trust this organization. So
yeah,
it's kind of.
No, I don't either. And yeah, I get it, and I get playing the veteran if you're a coaching staff trying to save it. I think from an organizational standpoint, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, it doesn't.
So they are probably looking at drafting somebody, and maybe that's the idea. Maybe they do think Minshew gives them a better chance to win than Glennon, and maybe it's, let's just ride this out so we can get our real franchise quarterback instead of, maybe Minshew wins a couple games and puts us in a bad spot.
It's like the Jets with Gase. Like, they know Gase isn't the long-term answer, but Gase gives them the best chance to lose and not fuck up getting Trevor Lawrence. This might be the smartest move. We've been pounding the table for Gase to get fired, but the Jets have actually been playing chess while we've all been thinking they're playing checkers.
Yeah, that's it.
For the last 2 years. No, I'm not saying it's real. I'm not saying it's what they're doing. I'm just trying to make sense of everything.
Yeah. All right, on to something less. Well, no, it's not any more fun. Daniel Jones exited Sunday's game with a hamstring injury. He's likely to miss a couple weeks. Transition to Colt McCoy. What does that do for the Giants' offense that is already bad?
Doesn't
do anything
really for you. I think Jones is a better quarterback than Colt McCoy at this point, but it's not like Colt McCoy really showed us really. Giants at top of the division right now. They held on tight against
somehow, some way.
Bengals.
Somehow, some way, top of the division, New York Giants.
Yeah, it's
ugly.
Wayne Gallman had 24 carries. Colt McCoy. I mean, we're gonna have to see.
Yeah,
I don't have any real
targets split between Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram, and I think that is where, those. We know what Colt McCoy is at this point. We saw him start a couple games for Washington as well. And what Colt McCoy is he's an intermediate passer. He doesn't have the big arm. You're going to get a lot of these intermediate routes that happen. And I think that takes the top off of Slayton a little bit and does play a bit more towards Sterling Shepard and a bit more towards Evan Ingram and the type of game that they play. Golden Tate also saw 9 targets. So we know that this is going to work, that they're going to work the intermediate game. I think it makes some of these Giants pieces you may have been holding a little bit we'll call it more playable because McCoy doesn't have the athleticism of Daniel Jones. He's not running it. He's not going to scramble for it for much. And yeah, so it was later in the game that Jones got hurt, but more your intermediate type of passers, I think, are what this is going to help a bit more. And I think it does cap Slayton some.
Next, well, he put up a good egg, so I'm going to fade all Giants. Obviously, you're not really. How much more can you fade them? Seattle this week on the road, then Arizona, Cleveland, Baltimore. I know Seattle's defense is terrible, but this is still Colt McCoy. Obviously, Cardinals, a lot of youth there, a lot of speed. They can completely wreck your day if their pass rush and blitz is on. And the Browns and Ravens. So I'm not buying the Wayne Gallman. Maybe we can try to see how the targets look like after this week against Seattle, but this is their best matchup. I agree. You're not playing Slayton. You probably have to play Ingram because it's fucking tight ends. And then I agree. You're probably playing Sterling Shepard if you're going to continue to do not primarily.
Yeah, and it's still the case where also that Shepard and Tate play such a similar role that target volume is still going to be split, and it was, but just keep an eye on that and know that you could do worse than either of those guys. Probably not season ending for Daniel Jones, but definitely fantasy season ending.
Yeah.
All right. Taysom Hill. So 2 weeks, no passing touchdowns for Taysom Hill. Denver. Damn. Get that in a second. Well, I should review this little book soon since I just spilled about an ounce of it. Oh well. Party foul. So Denver obviously was in a spot, right? No quarterbacks last week. The Saints, Peyton's on the record as saying, hey, this is not the week to do it. This is not the week to go out there and show that you can throw the ball all over the field or whatever. Just 16 pass attempts for Taysom Hill, less than 100 yards. No touchdowns, 1 interception over the last 2 weeks. 233 yards passing against a hapless Atlanta defense. They go back and play Atlanta this week before going and playing Philadelphia and Kansas City over the next 3. This offense, what have we learned with Taysom Hill at the helm over the last 2 weeks?
He has found a way. There is a man that has found a way to kill Kamara. His name is Taysom Hill. He's had 2 targets the last 2 games. Obviously, they don't want to target running backs out of the backfield. I think that's something that we need to take note of out of a lot of these mobile heavy quarterbacks. You see with Lamar Jackson, generally bottom of the league, targets to his running backs. You saw it early on with Deshaun Watson. You're seeing it in now glimpses with Taysom Hill. And expect the same if Jalen Hurts takes over, for any significant time this year. It's not good. And when you're looking at Kamara, he's someone that you can't bench because it's difficult. There's so much upside to him if they could just get him involved. He's had 24 carries, just shy of 100 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 total targets, 1 catch for -2 yards. That's fucking gross. Michael Thomas had, I think, 11 targets last time that that the Saints played Atlanta, or last week. He was pretty much held in check against Denver. But again, Denver fucking sucked. There was no need for them to pass. So I think Michael Thomas is still fine. The running game is where the concern is, and Taysom Hill is gobbling up all the touchdowns. Got 3 or 4 the last. So it pushes Kamara down to this RB2 range where you can't really sit him. You can't expect a blow-up game. Michael Thomas, you just have to hope that the Saints can, or that the Falcons can push the Saints enough to actually throw more. And everybody else is fucked. Like Hill has suppressed this offense to a slightly different version, but almost the same. has done.
Yeah, the one person that I didn't hear mentioned that you got to take note of is Latavius Murray. Because
And Murray, yes.
Latavius Murray has pretty much split the rushing work 50-50 with Kamara the last 2 weeks. You take away Kamara's receiving upside, and you're basically, Sans a little bit more touchdown upside from Kamara, dealing with the same, type of productivity. I don't want to say the same player. They're not the same player, but the same type of productivity. Latavius Murray over the last 2 weeks has been a flex level or a better, commodity. 19 carries. He actually out-touched Kamara last week. Again, not a game where they had to throw a ton because they were playing from ahead by a lot. Broncos completed one pass. 19 carries, 124 yards, and 2 touchdowns versus just 11 for 54 for Alvin Kamara and no touchdowns. You were 12 for 49 last week from Murray, and I think 13 for 51 from Kamara. So you do need to keep Latavius Murray in mind. Not a guy that gets a lot of love. Somebody that, is quietly, I believe, having a pretty solid season.
He's a flex play. He's not on Kamara's level, but he's clearly easily a flex RB. I think there's confidence there too.
Getting double-digit touches, so yeah. As far as Michael Thomas, you're right. In a game where they have to throw, Slant Boy's still running slants, so
he's still running the high-value, high percentage completion shots. I mean, this might be a game where, maybe we hear from Kamara. He wants to get more involved. Blah blah this, blah blah that. Saints are winning though. This type of offense that comes out of nowhere, even though it's always been around, it's difficult. This entire team just completely shifted how they play the game of football. Essentially, they become a run heavy, a lot of RPO, and maybe that's what fits Latavius Murray more. He's a bigger back than Kamara. He's a one cut guy. He's a one read, just go uphill. Like he's of the Tevin Coleman mold, and they found that success. He has become Mark Ingram, essentially.
Yeah, and the problem with Kamara is when you take away the receiving work, you're probably looking at this, but let's play a game. How many games has Kamara been over 100 yards rushing this year?
None.
How many games has he been over 80?
I see.
There's
two. Almost at 3.
Yeah,
but
it's one at 79.
It's the receiving. Yeah, it's the receiving work. You're spot on.
That's exactly it. Where you mentioned that with the rushing, you've got 100 plus yard game receiving with 2 touchdowns. You got 2 games over 90 yards receiving, and only 2 games under 50 yards with Drew Brees at quarterback in the receiving game. You look at targets, he's getting more target volume than some top receivers in the league are. But you take that away, and you basically have, yes, there's touchdown upside, but Todd Gurley type of runner as far as productivity. I'd love to do that comparison, actually, on a game-to-game, just rushing stats alone, because that's about what you're getting. You're getting high touchdown volume and between 40 and 70 yards.
It's not even like touchdown anymore, too. And that's the thing. What's gone last year was his touchdown volume. He just couldn't get into the end zone. This year, he's had a lot of rushing touchdowns. He's up to what, 10?
8
right now. He's got a lot of receiving touchdowns. He's had 4 receiving touchdowns. He's got more receiving yards than rushing yards. Take away his most productive part of his game, where a lot of his points are scored, at least from a floor aspect with his receiving receptions, target volume. Go from a guy who's averaging almost 9 targets a game down to 3 in 2 weeks. We may not be talking low enough. He may not be an RB2. He may be flex play, but we're going to play him because we know what the upside looks like. But Latavius Murray has gotten the starts. and he's been the most productive back. I mean, this may be the week where you have to look beyond your stud, look at the situation that's been given to you right now. And right now, Kamara is not an RB2. Right now, Kamara is
Flex
flex
value.
play with touchdown upside. It's still It's just still an offense that can produce a lot of points, and they keep the ball away from their defense. They want to control the pace of play, and they want the actual plays. That's what gives Kamara some of his.
Yeah. And they are playing Atlanta, so you should see more of a not such a run heavy, more of a neutral game script. But the pass volume's not there. So, Dan, you're absolutely right. And, if you're in a must-win situation, you could have a better option than Alvin Kamara this week, given what we've seen out of this offense with Taysom Hill.
You have to accept the fact that he's not an RB1. In the 2 games, and he just played this team last week. 13 carries for 45 yards, touchdown, 1 target, no catch.
Right.
Like they showed us last week what this could look like. Showed us again. No, you kind of almost have to throw out Denver like that. Like you're not gonna that game was set up like perfectly for running. He was so productive. He had 4.9 yards per carry.
It's just not fantasy productive, though. 51
exactly.
yards is not what you want.
No, him not scoring a touchdown is what prevented him from being able to. And right now, that's where we're at. I mean, if he blows up, would I be surprised? No, that's probably play him.
But what we've seen out of the last 2 weeks, though, you got to assume that's not going to be the case.
Yeah.
They're not getting involved in the receiving game, and they haven't lost, which is why you haven't heard about it.
Yes. All right. We've beaten this with a death. We've beaten this like a dead horse.
Have beaten this one to death, too. All right. I want to move on to the Steelers and Ravens debacle.
Yeah.
This is not so much fantasy related. This is how did the league do the right thing here? Debated, right? So for those that have been living under a rock for some reason, game originally supposed to happen on Thanksgiving. Ravens have a COVID outbreak. I also want to talk about fantasy commissioners and how this was handled in a lot of areas too. Just as a tie-in. Game's supposed to happen on Thursday. Doesn't happen. COVID outbreak. Rescheduled to Sunday. Game's supposed to happen Sunday. They're still pulling in cases. Rescheduled to Monday. Still cases as you come into the weekend. Pushed out to Tuesday. Still cases. No word from the league. No word from the league. No word from the league. Finally, game gets played on Wednesday. Today. Disaster piece. Wednesday football, not good. Ravens game next week, pushed back against Dallas. They were down to their top 2 running backs. They were down their starting quarterback. They were down about half of their defense. Should the league at this point have considered Week 18? Did the league do the right thing while trying to push through with this? Also keeping in mind, they had 2 more positive tests before today's game kicked off. And the league was just like, F it, we're going to force this one in. So did the league do the right thing? Let's start there.
If you look how they handled the situation with some of the minor outbreaks in Denver with their quarterbacks and with Oakland and their offensive line and then defense. I don't know if there's a correct answer for this. I'll be honest. I want to say no.
Do you think?
It feels like.
Let me ask you this: do you think Denver was handled the right way? Should they have been forced to play with no quarterbacks?
Yes, I think that was handled fine, and that was because of how they handled it. LA, I know that the quarterback position is super important. And I get that from what it does to the competitiveness of the game sucks. I don't know why Denver couldn't have brought some. I thought they had Blake Bortles.
They do. Bortles is one of them was deemed close contact. It was all 4 quarterbacks, so they didn't. Bortles is on their practice squad, but he was also deemed close contact. So That's why they couldn't bring him in. And when they found out it was a Saturday, so they couldn't even go sign somebody. They couldn't do what the Colts had to do a couple of years ago with was Josh Freeman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just bring somebody in. Yeah. I mean, it's. I think that was handled fine. I still think the Baltimore thing, just with the ongoing cases, and not just with them, it was also with Pittsburgh too. This game should have just been forfeited, or it should have just been all right, just cut. I don't think they should have forced them to play. I get why they did it. I don't even agree with the Week 18 thing, because that just fucks up with the playoffs. And yes, they can just start pushing stuff back, but then you're looking at teams with.
But if you cut it or forfeit it, you're fucking with the playoffs too. It's not like Ravens are right now not a lock to make the playoffs. They're 6-4. They almost won that game today too. So,
and that's with them getting some of those early cases back. They didn't get back Dobbins, or they decided not to activate Dobbins
or Ingram,
but they could have had him for this game if they chose to. It's like I said, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I from a personal standpoint, from just seeing what the world or from all this country has handled COVID, probably wasn't the best choice to play it. But when money is involved, and with bonuses involved through contracts and shit like that, and the fact that Baltimore was going to refuse to play if the game stayed on Tuesday, they even came out like the players said that they were going to refuse. They were going to refuse to play if the game.
Well, it's because the league drug their feet on telling them travel.
Exactly,
dude.
I think the league. But this is unique though. Like, you can blame the league for how they've handled it, but we've never handled something like this.
Yeah.
Ever. So
tough situation for the league to be in. I personally think that they screwed the pooch with this one.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think that either, unfortunately you're past bye weeks, so you can't really schedule shuffle right now. But, I think that they're not having a Pro Bowl, for example. So, you do have an extra week to play with in there, because you normally have the week off before the Super Bowl, the Pro Bowl happens.
Yep.
You've got an extra week in there to play with, to where you could have thrown it to Week 18 if you're that concerned about health and safety. From a competitive balance standpoint, I got to agree. They had canceled it because the Ravens were missing people regardless of where they were, where those players were. Then that's not fair to the Broncos having to play a game with no quarterbacks. It's not fair to the 49ers having to play a game with, out an offensive line and one wide receiver, essentially. So, I think that having the game from a competitive balance standpoint is the right answer. From a health and safety standpoint, when 2 additional positives came in, I feel like it should have been punted to the end of the season if there were still playoff implications there. And there would have been.
Yeah.
So, the other question here is, though, fantasy commissioners. There's a debate in one of my leagues. A lot of fantasy commissioners have taken the approach of name a substitute. If a game's canceled, we'll plug in that substitute. But one pushback was, okay, I wanted to name a substitute in case this guy gets hurt during a game. Or I want to name a substitute because this player is questionable and, may be limited or may not go. And he's playing on Monday night. And that really got me to stop and think, because my initial thought is I want to argue with that. But my follow-up thought, especially with the Monday night point, is how is it different? If I have a player that's questionable to play on Monday night, all of my other players are going to go before that player plays on Monday night, and I'm expected to have a contingency option that also plays on Monday night to plug in. I can't just go name somebody else that played on Sunday, for example, and put them there. If a game is at risk of being canceled, and you will at this point, although I don't think this is going to be an issue going forward because the league's obviously proven they're not going to cancel shit. How is it any different than having a player that's questionable on Monday night that might not play, having a player that's in a game that, could be canceled because you know before it happens that that's a possibility. So why do you get a get out of jail free card on one and not on the other?
I mean, you're right? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, like your first initial reaction is to because it's COVID and because it's out of the reach of the players, and it's not injury related. It's something more. Again, I agree. We have yet to see a game actually get canceled because of it. I don't think we will. I think the league is desperately trying to avoid that potential fiasco if that ever were to occur. And I think this falls onto the actual commissioner, onto the commissioners themselves. If it's an issue, and I've heard this same argument brought up in other. Well, why should this be treated differently? You already know ahead of time you're taking that risk to play those players.
Yeah.
And I think for the first time this week, it felt like there was a real chance that those games could have been canceled.
Yeah.
And I think the popular route to handle this, done by guys like Scott Fish and Ryan McDowell, guys that have their own commissioner podcast. Shout out to those guys, if whatever reason they're listening. They chose to handle this same way like this since the beginning. I think that's where it starts is how has your commissioner approached this? And did he lay out rules for this specific scenario before the season started? A lot of commissioners didn't because they didn't really know how to actually approach it. And we led to a week that's this far deep in. It was week 12. Most leagues are in the playoffs in 2 weeks. Some leagues are in the playoffs next week. Some of them don't start till week 15. But either way, we're in deep playoff contention, and the stakes are higher now. If people were only bitching about this week, they should have been bitching around in the season. That'd be my only argument is why is it a bigger now than it was?
Because somebody actually because rules weren't laid out beforehand, and then somebody
and that's where the issue is.
Well, it had been talked about, not implemented, and then it was, we really should have done this. Going forward, we'll do this, but then the pushback is, how is it any different than a Sunday or Monday night game? The fact is that it's not. It's not any different than having a player in a Sunday or a Monday night game that is questionable in a true game time decision. It other than the fact that you're talking about two teams worth of players, not a single
one player.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a player who's hurt, where there's obviously more risk involved, instead of a game being risked being canceled, not due to. Right. There are I agree for this specific scenario that it's definitely they're not that far off. I think the risk of losing a bunch of players instead of one player, I think you can kind of you can make the argument against why you should have something like this. Could ruin the integrity of that entire week potentially if there's a lot of fantasy relevant players involved.
Right. Okay. So now I got to give my review, and I was waiting on this moment because this bourbon is like the Bears offense with Mitch Trubisky for me.
It gives you excitement that then quickly fades?
No. It's exciting, but it's not as good as it could be. There are things to like about it, but ultimately it's not. It's not a Patrick Mahomes offense. This isn't. It's Little Book. It's not Booker's.
Yeah,
is basically how this boils down to me. It's thinner than what Booker's is, even though it's still 120 proof. It doesn't quite coat your mouth in the same way. It is sweet up front. I mean, there's a ton of caramel, apple, vanilla. Goes into a bit of leather and oak on the finish, so a little bit drier, and a huge pop of cinnamon and rice spice. And then, there's not really an alcohol burn to it per se, but you can tell it's 122 proof. So for me,
122. Oof.
Yeah,
that's got some beef behind. That's got some strength there.
Right. So Big pop at the end. Finishes dry for sure. Make you smack your lips. You know, overall it retails for $120. I don't know if I would pay that for it. I might. But, you know, it's not something I'm going to walk in and be like, hell yeah, give me that. I'm going to run to the store for it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's not good. I grade bourbon, unlike beer, on a huge value curve because some of it can be so expensive. Just because I won't pay $120 or something doesn't mean I think it's a bad bourbon. It just means that I don't think it drinks as $120 worth. It's not a bad bourbon. It's an $80 bourbon, not $120. So, there you go. Just like the Bears with Mitch Trubisky is Toyota. It's better than Nick Foles. It looks better than, and this is my take on it. Trubisky is starting week 13. That's why we're talking about this, by the way. Offense moved better. It really moved better. You know, overall, they were not stalling out drives nearly as often. Weren't a ton of 3-and-outs. Yes, they were behind early. Part of that can be attributed to the defense playing cover 2 shell and just getting absolutely shredded. I mean, Packers put up 41 points. That's not a normal Bears defensive performance. You know, there was an arm punt at one point. There was a bad interception at one point. But the thing to like is that the offense moved better than it has under Nick Foles since he took over as starter. You know, running game looked good. It's against the Packers. They'd made some changes on their offensive line. Sure, the running game looked good, but the thing that continues to stand out me most about the Bears isn't the quarterback play. It isn't the line play. It's how badly coached this team is. And how evident it is when you watch that entire game how badly coached this team is compared to the Green Bay Packers, for example, and the job that Matt LaFleur is doing there. From play calling to stupid penalties to, you know, just lack of discipline, clock management, it's just bad. You've got Allen Robinson complaining on Twitter that he wants to go someplace else. He got 13 targets and 2 touchdowns. So, you know, my take on this from a fantasy perspective, not a Bears fan, you are better with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback. You are better with the changes that they've made to the offensive line and Dave Montgomery. It opens it up a bit more than what Nick Foles does because of the mobility, because he can hide the offensive line's problems. You know, obviously Bears going to be in a market for a quarterback in the offseason. For the rest of the season, Trubisky's got some streaming value. You know, did run for 11 yards, 242, 3 touchdowns. Solid day. So, Dan, your thoughts on what you saw on Monday night?
Moving forward, Lions, Texans, Vikings.
Great
games.
schedule.
Great schedule. I get about as neutral can get. Our conversations with our group chat about Trubisky and kind of the live, I guess, responses to how the game looked. I did my absolute best not to shit on the situation because it's not like Minnesota better or Baltimore's looked. Trubisky looked better. I think you can contribute that to the fact that he sat on the bench a bunch of weeks and wanted to go out there and at home, or it was in Green Bay. Green Bay knew they were going to win this game. I think the Bears defense, I think they're just giving up on Nagy. I think this team as a whole not bought into what he wants to do. And I think you saw that.
Well,
this team
the defense
should not have given up 41 points. I don't care who it was. This is a great defense, despite some of the injuries they have. They looked pedestrian. This is the first time this entire year that I thought that this defense just didn't give a shit.
Well, also the fact that they looked bad, but as I was watching the defensive play calling, and I'm going to indict Chuck Pagano here a little bit, as I'm watching the defensive play calling, they're in cover 2 shell most of that game. They're not stacking people at the line. They're not giving Rodgers anything to think about as far as who's coming, what's coming. You got they're getting matchups that are Devontae Adams on Danny Trevathan, which is a mismatch.
Yeah.
So that's why I go back to poorly coached.
Sure.
It is when you see Devontae Adams on Danny Trevathan, when you notice this pattern of they're not giving Aaron Rodgers anything to think about, they're not disguising anything, they're just playing straight up cover 2, rush 4. The Packers are going to expose you every time.
Yeah.
So
it does get better. I think this defense is in for better days. Obviously, Lions, Texans, Vikings, Jags, there's a lot of potential.
Well, there's a lot to like there.
There's a lot to like there from a fantasy streaming standpoint.
Especially for Trubisky, especially, because he should remain the starter.
He should remain the starter. There's no need to go back to Foles. There never need to Foles. Honest here. And Trubisky's basically playing for his bridge contract for a new team. They then draft somebody. Basically playing to be back on.
He's on the Blake Bortles career arch.
He's on the Blake Bortles. Yes. Without
the garbage time.
Without the true garbage time. It's great to see Robinson be finally utilized. It's great to see David Montgomery
go over 100 yards. He had a good game.
Yeah, he had a great game.
143 total yards and a touchdown. Receiving touchdown.
He had 5 catches. You want to see this thing. This is what you wanted to see, from this guy last year. What you want to see from Robinson on a consistent basis is what you should see moving forward, just given the matchups he has. You're not rushing out there to pick up Trubisky because we've seen, even against bad defenses, the wheels can fall off and it may not matter. And I think what we're going to see next week against the Lions is what I expect to see forward and to see how this team rebounds. Because let's be honest, again, they're not out of the playoffs. They're still not within this race. And
they have a great schedule, too.
Exactly. A very cake schedule. Week 15 against the Vikings will be pivotal. Will be important. We'll just switch words to what this team will be like in terms of the last 2 weeks. I think next week is my true test to see what is
right. So one other thing I want to point out here, this is a dynasty note. There is a name you need to know on this team that has not gotten talked about a lot, that has not gotten a lot of love, that dynasty-wise has a lot of things lying underneath of him to pay attention to, and that is Darnell Mooney.
Oh, yeah.
Darnell Mooney saw 9 targets. He only caught 3 of them. The 4.38 40 guy, 5'10", typical outside speed guy. He's on the field. He is getting targets, though. Does play some out of the snap, but he's on the field for 83% of routes, averaging 6 targets a game. And so here's some of the things that jump out when you look at his player profiler page. 927 air yards, good for 19th in the league. Target distance, 20th in the league, 14.3. 18 deep targets, good for 13th. Moving on down here, 612 unrealized air yards. Good for 4th in the league. Yards per reception, just 10.7, which doesn't line up with what he's being targeted at. Yards per route run, 1.03. He's running a ton of yards, but here's where he's getting bit. Catchable target rate. Just 44 of his targets were catchable, have been deemed catchable from his quarterbacks as he works deep. 99th in the league. He's getting separation. He's 16th in the league in separation, and he's getting targeted downfield. This is a guy that has the potential to go boom. His quarterbacks are just failing him, and he's got some matchups here in the coming weeks where he could go boom. He's got Desmond Trufant will be his primary cornerback matchup next week, which is a fantastic matchup for him. Keep an eye over the next couple weeks on Darnell Mooney as a streamer. And keep an eye on him in Dynasty if you're a rebuilding team, because he could probably be had for cheap. And the way he is being utilized and what the underlying peripherals say is that Darnell Mooney probably has some better days ahead of him. It's going to make him a commodity.
He's going to be one of the bigger, deep sleepers that you're going to hear about next year. It's going to depend on if they also go out there and try to attack a very strong and deep wide receiver class in 21. But he's got the perfect skill set to complement Allen Robinson. You see that Chicago wants to get him. Anthony Miller is completely posted. He's done. Hurts my soul because I'm a fan of the guy. But he's done. This is now the Robinson and Mooney show, and Mooney has skill set, as you just alluded to be a viable fantasy asset onto a roster. He's just playing with the wrong quarterbacks and likely just with their whole wrong coaching staff in general. Push that up, you bring in a new quarterback, you breathe life into this offense. If Robinson is gone after this year, that truly helps him. That means they'll probably end up attacking, the receiver position early on and pairing up with another guy who could hold both together. Do I think Mooney's the wide receiver? No.
No.
He gets fantasy value though.
He's going to be a good complementary piece though.
Yes, he is. He's got, this John Brown, type of ceiling. He'll start off as a vertical threat that if he can fall into the right offense that can have him throw the football a lot more, you're going to see some good fantasy days.
Indeed. I agree with that 100%. One other note for Dynasty Nerds, 18.9 is his breakout edge, 38.6% college, 36.5% college dominator. Both very good. So,
checking the boxes, what he did.
Yeah, it's just he's got to have somebody that can hit him deep because right now he is getting separation. They're game planning for it. It's just not connecting.
Yeah.
But plus matchups ahead, so there's a name to know.
So, before we jump on, we're going to review 450 North. Kind of alludes, going to bridge us from the Darnell Mooney talk. Something that you should be buying into, something that is very good, has got a lot of value to it. This beer, well, obviously you can't retain value because you're both done drinking it. It's extremely good, and I love it, and I want to talk about it. Again, I'm drinking banana cream cheese slushy 450 North. Basically, you're generally going to get what the can tells you, and the can literally will tell you banana sweetness. What this beer is, it's extremely thick. I do have some of it left. Very banana heavy. It's got the slight and subtle banana. I won't say tartness to it, but the little subtle bite before all the sweetness kicks in. And if you haven't had a chance to try one of these slushy beers or try these heavily sours from other places, if you like that style or if you like heavily fruit beers, I highly recommend. Highly, if you're ever in this Columbus, Indiana area or want to get involved in trying this style of beer, this is, I think, the correct path to go. So, like Mooney, you should be buying him in Dynasty and hopefully reap the benefits if the Bears make the right choices in the offseason. And like this beer, you haven't tried it yet, go out there, give these guys a chance. You have to pay up a little bit, but I promise you it's well worth it.
All right. Well, speaking of things that are well worth it, I'm glad there's only, 3 weeks after this one? For this segment.
Weekly preview.
And I say I'm glad about that because we haven't found a way to do one of these yet that just after the first 5 games doesn't just feel like it's dragging ass.
Yeah, and for those of you that have been a fan of the show for a long time know that we kind of dread in season.
Yep, you know how it goes. Off season's more fun.
Yeah, it just in season's the same thing. While I think we found a little more this year, talking more of the betting aspect and touching on the fantasy points, it still drags ass.
Yeah.
We'll just say what it is.
All right, I'm going to call an audible on this. One by one, Dolphins Bengals. Are you looking at FanDuel?
Yes, I am.
Anything about this game that jumps out to you with the Dolphins and Bengals? Anything in the fantasy matchups you like? Anything in the betting you like that just really stands out as, hey, we need to talk about it?
T. Higgins is fine. I think that's the biggest point from this is that with Brett Allen, Higgins was the guy that actually was a fantasy producer. He'll likely get Xavier Howard, so it may not be the best play of the week, or Brian Jones. Like Dolphins secondary, especially their outside corners, are probably not going to play this week, but I think moving forward, we should be comfortable with T. Higgins. Batting aspect, no. I don't like 11.5 at home. I don't like, even with Fitz, if Tua plays, I definitely don't like it. I just don't think they're going to need the score. And the Dolphins defense is good enough to help prevent the Bengals from scoring a lot of points. Even 42 seems high, almost matchup.
Yeah, a couple of things we need to talk about here. You mentioned T. Higgins being fine. He shared the target. He actually was second on the team in targets behind Tyler Boyd. Boyd just had a productive day. Pretty evenly spread out between Higgins, Boyd, and Drew Sample. So tight end to keep an eye on there. Joe Mixon, remember, on IR. Gio Bernard will get the start. He was held relatively in check without much of a passing game there. Dolphins defense is good. This is a plus matchup for the Dolphins defense. It's a stream week for Gio Bernard, so you could have better options out there. As far as the Dolphins go, obviously Devontae Parker and Tua are fine this week. Tua is a streamer. What you got to pay attention to here is going to be the running game. Myles Gaskin should be able to return this week. Salvin Ahmed still running limited. You're going to have to keep an eye on that as it goes forward. If both of them play, the first game where you've had both of them since Ahmed's mini breakout, Gaskin was having a mini breakout before he got hurt, so it's going to be real interesting to see how that target volume split, how that rush volume splits. I would consider both of them flex plays at best. I would not be gung-ho about plugging either one of Gaskin or Ahmed in a potentially must-win week when you don't know how that volume is going to break down.
Yeah, I'm probably just going to. We can get a more clear answer on the running back start. Play that one if I need to. Otherwise, I think from a fantasy standpoint, I think Parker might be the outside of the Miami defense.
Yep. Only betting line I like here, by the way, is the Dolphins and a money line parlay. Because the odds are terrible on it, so throw them in a money line parlay. All right. Titans Browns. So Derrick Henry, obviously expect him to rumble in this game. Good matchup for him. A.J. Brown is just a man's man. Corey Davis has been perfectly fine over the last couple weeks. So I see no real reason why you should fall off of Corey Davis at all. Is wide receiver 2 type play. And really in comparison, Ryan Tannehill is also perfectly fine. Now, expect this game to be more running focused between the two teams. Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, obviously still splitting work. Both of them are running back 2s with the RB1 upside on any given week. Tannehill won't kill you. Not going to blow up either. Should be considered a stream at best. But I like A.J. Brown and Corey Davis. Brown is a wide receiver 1. Davis is a wide receiver 2 to 3 type play. Wide receiver 3 type of roster plug-in. Derrick Henry to have another just monster day.
I mean, yeah, those are your fantasy plays. Jarvis Landry. If what we saw from this past week is an indication that Baker. I'll be interested to see how Baker bounces back and what should be another deep matchup for him. But on the road, and Baker's been less than consistent. I actually do like Cleveland +6. I think the running game is enough to keep the game relatively close. I don't like the over-under here at 52.5. I think there's a chance that this game could push over because games are trying to throw, and I can see a blowout in either direction. So I'll take Cleveland +6. Yeah, betting the over/under. I agree with you. All your fantasy talking.
Yes, it very much is. Looking at receivers that have scored against Tennessee, just from a Landry perspective, there's no real consistency as to what happens. It's just been top receivers. So that plays to the Landry take. All right, cool. Keeping it moving. Lions, Bears. Bears are favored by 3 in this one. Mitch Trubisky drawing the start, as we just talked about. For the Bears, Allen Robinson, David Montgomery. Mitch Trubisky, I thought, had a fine game. The thing is they were behind in that one, and 2 of those touchdowns were garbage time. So, I think Mitch Trubisky and Ryan Tannehill are probably at about the same level this week for very different reasons. I think this is one where the Bears try to establish the running game. We mentioned Darnell Mooney as a YOLO play. If you need some upside, this is a game where that could get deployed. Be the first game with the Lions since they fired Matt Patricia, so we're going to have to see how they come out of the gate. But this is another one that feels very chalk to me, at least from the Bears side.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not excited in rushing out Trubisky.
No, he's a stream at best.
He's stream at best. You're going to play Robinson. You're going to play Montgomery. A healthy started. I think Mooney has upside play to him. We believe this game will push over. I don't really care about the spread. I think the Bears are only getting 3 because they're at home. Lions and Bears are both teams. And it's really going to be a focus on who they get back for this week. They should get back Swift. Who knows about Golladay at this point? If Golladay doesn't play, especially if Swift doesn't play, then I'll take the Bears. I'll take the Bears money line for sure, even though the odds aren't great. And I think this game goes under. I just don't trust Detroit to score enough points. And I think Chicago, if they can get the running game, it's going to let this game eke out. And you're looking at maybe 38, 39, maybe 40 total.
Yeah, one thing to note about DeAndre Swift, by the way, is keep an eye on Akeem Hicks for that. Aaron Jones had a monster game. Eddie Goldman, the Bears, really, stellar nose tackle. Tackle, I guess, has opted out and has been COVID opted out all season. Outside of Akeem Hicks, they don't have a lot of depth up the middle. Akeem Hicks can wreck the center of an offensive line. If Hicks doesn't play, it's going to be a blow-up game for DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it with
Jones.
Jones. I mean, Jamal, if you want to see just how better Jones is than Jamal Allen, just watch that game from Monday night or from Sunday night. It was night and day. Jones was chunking this Bears front 7 the entire game. Well, Jamal Adams just kind of looked, or not Jamal Williams just kind of looked.
Jamal Williams was 17 for 73 at the touchdown.
Still.
Yeah.
Still.
Eye test. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what to note. 17 for 73 at the touchdown for Williams, 17 for 90 for Aaron Jones. No touchdowns.
And my finest moment, but still, it looked worse than what it was.
They gave him 170 yards rushing, though. So, I mean,
that's the note.
170 yards and a touchdown with no Akeem Hicks. So watch for Akeem Hicks. Swift is a running back 2 with upside anyway, but he's a locked and loaded running back 1 if Akeem Hicks misses.
Yep, I agree.
All right. As far as the bets, Chicago, I mean, I don't like the spread. I'd probably take Chicago on the money line. They're favored. I do think the Bears win that game.
Yeah, that's the only thing. I'll take the Bears in a money line parlay. I do feel confident that they'll win that game, so I'll just take the money line and the decent odds when comparing to dollar.
Yep.
Combining it with the
Colts, Texans, Deshaun Watson, going to be a tough one for him. Going up against the Colts, who, they do generally have a solid defense. And, losing Will Fuller, to where we talked about it in the intro, he really only has one weapon. It's Brandon Cooks. So Brandon Cooks is all I'm looking at here from a Texans perspective. From Colts perspective, Jonathan Taylor should be back. And it does serve as a plus type of matchup for him. Michael Pittman also had a very good game last week and is somebody to keep an eye on that you could consider as a wide receiver 3 type play this week against a bad Houston defense.
Yeah, I think Houston's also. They should get Jonathan Taylor back, or not Houston. The Colts should get Jonathan Taylor back. So I still like him in this plus matchup. Hines, if I think also has flex value because we know Houston's offense can be even without Will Fuller. I think those two plays with Pittman are your pretty chalk plays. Don't really care about the tight ends because they're both going to flip back and forth. And UI has pretty much succumbed his office status to Michael Pittman. Texans just cooks. Watson, I think, has high end streamer value because he has a lot of upside to him. His rushing production, to the fact that he's still just a really good quarterback. Boutique may even get some value into this. He should see an uptick in routes and snaps and potential target volume. You got to see him being involved even with Fuller, and this kind of helped pump that up too. He had only 3 targets last week, but he had 1 red zone target. He had 3 red zone targets against them.
Sure. Yeah, any doubt that the Colts win this one and cover 3.5?
I take the Colts half.
Yeah.
I like the over 2.
Yep. Jacksonville, Minnesota. Sneaky, what could be a good game. 2 offenses that can kind of move a football. Mike Glennon is a high-tier streamer this week, I think, in this one, up against a bad Minnesota defense. You're fine with James Robinson. Keep an eye. It's DJ Chark if he plays. If he doesn't, chase the Cullen Johnson points because he was the plug-in. He was the plug-and-play guy. As far as the Vikings go, they get to run their game script. It's going to be a lot of Dalvin Cook. Thielen always has red zone upside. With Justin Jefferson, I don't know how you bench him right now. Even though this is a game where he could whelm if the game script is tilted towards the Vikings.
Yeah, it's. I don't like 10 points.
I don't
I don't like double-digit spreads. And we saw what Minnesota looked like against Dallas at home. Lost that game. I don't like the over-under 52.5. I think it could hit, but I think you're looking at, again, what we talked about with Browns and Titans game. You're really hoping for a competitive game so both teams can be push scoring, or where one team completely dominates and the other team kind of just gets a couple garbage time touchdowns. I just don't like betting those, so I'll stay away from the betting in the game. I think minus 480 is okay for a big money line parlay, but I'm not really that excited about it. And your fantasy, you're right. I don't know if I'm excited to play Mike Glennon, but this is a plus matchup. Sure. I mean, I'm really just excited about Jacksonville. Obviously, Vikings. I think Cousins even has Cousins, Cook. We'll see if Thielen is able to come back, and Jefferson because you can't bench him.
Yep. Yeah, you can't bench Jefferson. Just be prepared that may not. If the Vikings have a lead and maintain a lead, that may not work out because if we've seen the Vikings, if they can run the football and you can't stop them running the football and they're up, they just going to run the football. And Cousins is only going to throw it 20 times. You're not going to get a ton of volume there.
Especially if they score early and often.
Right.
The defense can make a couple stops against Jacksonville. That can this game could get out of hand.
Yep. Jets Raiders. It's a good get right game for Derek Carr.
Did that last week.
Yeah, well, the Falcons have been playing better since Raheem Morris took over as coach. So, really, it should be a good get right game for Derek Carr.
If you want to, I mean, it should be.
But
it probably will be.
You really have no reason to start Derek Carr this week, though. And the thing about the Jets is that quarterbacks don't do well against the Jets. Why? Because they don't have to throw. They're never in the lead. So you're not playing Derek Carr this week. Are you playing anybody from the Raiders other than Josh Jacobs this week?
And Darren Waller.
And Darren
Again, tight end.
Yeah. Because tight ends are tight ends.
Yeah, because tight ends are. I think Derek Carr will have. I mean, it's just streaming value. You know that there's upside there, but you also know that it's not exciting. So I think Carr's still a streamer value. The Jets, Mims has been over 60, I think, receiving yards back from his injury. So, or it's been creeping up that 60, 70 range. He has upside. He has good enough floor to be flex-ish worthy. The Raiders can score points, forcing the Jets to have to play from behind, as suggested by the spread. I think it's good enough. And I think this Raiders defense sucks. And I think the 47 is a good over. And I think the Raiders should beat it by a touchdown today.
Yeah.
Touchdown.
Yeah, Mims has given you some solid performances, especially over the last 3 weeks. He's really in that wide receiver 3 type of range pretty consistently. Hasn't broken it for a touchdown yet. Has been putting up yardage. Back to the Raiders real quick. If you're looking for receiving options, Renfrow had 9 targets last week and 73 yards. Again, don't expect them to be behind in this game. And, I'm not chasing Hunter Renfrow. This was his first game over even 5 targets since week 7. Nelson Aguilar kind of came back down to earth, so I'm staying away from Raiders receiving options. If you're tempted, don't. Better options. But, yeah, for the Jets, you're really just kind of looking at Denzel Mims if you need it. Again, touchdown signs cap, but yardage should be fine. Frank Gore is the last man standing from a running back perspective at the moment. So he's got flex value. And beyond that, you don't want anything to do with the Jets.
Oh, too much on this.
We did.
Saints Falcons.
Yeah, Saints Falcons. So Saints and Falcons are where I'm going to do this beer review.
Okay.
You saw this game on paper at the beginning of the season, even 2 weeks ago. And you said, damn, that looks like it's going to be a good one. Should be a ton of points. Should be great for fantasy. Should be a total barn burner. It's like I saw the description on this beer, and I'm like, damn, that's probably going to be a good one. Sounds like it's going to have, nice malty sweetness to it. And then you get not all the aspects removed from it that you're excited about, but a lot of them. Drew Brees is hurt. Alvin Kamara is not being used in the receiving game. Julio Jones is dealing with injuries. You're really looking at, a game that's going to do Michael Thomas and Calvin Ridley well. Look at this beer. You don't get the malty sweetness that you're hoping for off of it. It does roasted well. It does winter well because it does have a nice roastiness to it. Roasted malt flavor is very prevalent in this. Easy to drink. Just not everything you were hoping for it to be. So, that being said, a lighter body, like I said, it's an easier drink. Not as sweet as it was anticipated or as the description would lead you to believe. There's a little bit of toffee notes, but for the most part, it's just kind of it's very roasty, for lack of a better term. Finish is short, doesn't linger around a whole lot. Doesn't have any harsh notes to it, nothing not to like. It's just doesn't have quite the dimension that you would have been hoping for when you first saw it on paper.
Sadly disappointing, but
slightly, but not entirely. Usually how reviews on me go. Slightly disappointing, not entirely, but slightly. All right. Saints Falcons. Calvin Ridley, Michael Thomas, Latavius Murray, Todd Gurley, Alvin Kamara. Those are your fantasy pieces that you're really looking at here. Matt Ryan, Taysom Hill. So Taysom Hill is a high-end stream. He's not giving you Lamar Jackson 100-yard type of performances, but he is a quarterback that's giving you 70-plus yards on the ground. He's giving you 2 rushing touchdowns the last 2 weeks. He's not going to kill you. So, I think it's safe to say Taysom Hill is somebody you're starting in most scenarios.
I mean, yeah, it's Lamar Jackson his rookie season. You're not expecting high passing production, but the guy can give you RB1 production from the quarterback position. You're going to fucking take it. And that's just what it is.
It's just
I'm not even
production.
excited for Matt Ryan. I mean, he was fucking got off 2 weeks ago against the same team. So it's unless there's a big change made, I think Taysom Hill is the only quarterback I'm going to play, and we've talked to death about the Saints as a whole. So, betting wise, I'll take the Saints -3. Like, I don't think they'll blow out the way that they did to the Falcons 2 weeks ago, but we do have somewhat of a blueprint to what.
Yeah, basically Calvin Ridley. I mentioned Gurley and Kamara are about the same value, and I think that's something I'm going to stand behind, is that Gurley and Kamara are about the same value right now. Gurley's actually got one more 100-yard rushing game than Kamara does. So, I mean, without the receiving game being there, Kamara's a running back too, Gurley's a running back too this week. In my humble estimation, they both have touchdown upside, so if I were still doing weekly rankings, I couldn't put them down in the 3 range. They'd both be firmly in the 2 range.
Yeah, I think Latavius Murray also belongs in that
2 range. I would have, and right now I've got Murray ahead of Kamara.
Yeah,
which might be sacrilege, but he is.
Is what it is.
Yep. Calvin Ridley's the only receiver, and Michael Thomas. So don't get cute. Okay, keeping that moving. Rams Cardinals. So this game's already happened once this year, hasn't it? I think it has.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So Rams and Cardinals. You've got Rams favored by 3 in this one. Are the Rams just super fucking frustrating?
Yes, they are the Buffalo Bills of the NFC. You think you know who they are. You think you have an idea of how to bat them. And they fuck you. Or the Browns. You can also use the Browns instead of the. Either way, it's.
They have not played the Cardinals yet this year.
Okay. Either way, the Rams have been super frustrating to bet. I'll be interested to go back to look at how they've done against the spread, but I can't imagine it's great.
No, I can't either. They've been frustrating to bet, and they've been frustrating to play people from.
That is true. Sure.
You know, the running backs have been frustrating. It was Cam Akers last week doing it. You had a stretch of Darrell Henderson there in the middle. Cooper Kupp is either giving you 100-plus yard, 13 to 20 target games, or nothing, damn near. Robert Woods is giving you, actually, that reminds me, I need to go back and look at my Christian Kirk take from last week. Sorry. Robert Woods is giving you a little bit more consistency. So, you can probably go ahead and start Robert Woods. Cooper Kupp, this game should be high scoring enough to where they do have to pass. Question is, which running back you're looking at? Is it both Henderson and Akers that have flex value? Or are you going chasing the Akers points from last week? Are you sticking with the fact that Henderson had the most consistent stretch of any back out of the Rams? Where are you leaning out on that one?
None. I think what we could finally be seeing is what we saw from them early part of the season when all 3 backs were healthy. That's gross.
Right. Cardinals, they don't do well against slot. It's a Cooper Kupp game. So you're good with Kupp and Woods both.
I mean, you should always be good.
Yeah.
The biggest thing holding Akers back is snap share. He only had 27.1. Obviously, running backs can't be productive if they're not on the field. 9 carries in those snaps, so out there, he's getting the touch. He's getting touches when he's playing on the field. Again, which is what you want to see. And from his performance last week compared to Henderson, you should expect an uptick in Akers. I still don't think it's good enough to play it. I actually think Akers, his uptick in involvement just makes every running back not viable. You want to see it for one more week, and you want to see a positive trend the same way that Swift got it throughout this year, and the same way Jonathan Taylor has kind of been back and forth, but it's always seemed to get somewhat usage outside of 1 or 2 games. I'm not there for Akers. I'm off of Henderson. Fuck Malcolm Brown. You're only playing the receivers. I don't trust Goff for the. As watching him play, I'm fucking.
No,
I'm done with Wentz. So.
Goff just seems like he doesn't see the field well. It's like when a play develops the way a play is supposed to develop, I think he's good. When it comes to any form of improvisation or having to get off of your first read, it doesn't go well for him.
It's like he's great with scripted. Like the Rams always look good the first couple drives when everything's scripted. So as for the Cardinals, I think it's pretty obviously you're playing Murray, obviously you're playing Hopkins. Drake has been finding the end zone, which is on his value. I don't know how great the matchup is. The Rams' defense has been playing well, but Drake gets goal line work, and the Cardinals have a high scoring offense in football. You play that running back because left side. And I think Christian Kirk, he's boom bust, but again, high scoring offense in the game that should be a lot of points being scored. We're playing him.
Yeah, Drake 3 touchdowns since coming back from injury, 2 games over 75 yards. So you're riding Drake. He's a mid to low running back to you this week against a tough Rams defense. Kyler Murray struggled. You've got DeAndre Hopkins going to end up with Jalen Ramsey. You're playing those players, but for the Cardinals, it's a matchup that doesn't line up well for them, and you kind of have to temper upside.
You just temper your expectations
because it is a matchup that does not line up well for them. So, looking at betting, Cardinals are plus 130, odds plus 3.
I like the Cardinals at home.
I do too. I like the Cardinals at home because we've seen the Rams just play pedestrian more often than not. I don't like the way this matchup lines up for the Cardinals in the least bit, but all I think that does is keep the game close. I think it's even, and I think that at plus 130 odds, that's probably where I'm going because the odds are better.
Yeah. Like I understand if you don't want to bet the odds. If you think this game is close, plus 3 is it's still a good bet. Minus 128 is not the best you want to see for your spread. But we've seen a lot of close games, and I think this is going to be a close scoring game. I think this is going to be a back and forth scoring game. I think 48.5 is a smash over. I think that's an easy over. I know the Cardinals' offense has struggled as of late, but we've seen what this team could be, especially in divisional matchups. I like the over here more than anything else, even the money line for the Cardinals. But I think they'll win, and I think this game goes over. A little late parlay. Cardinals money line and the
over. Sure. All right. Giants Seahawks. Is there any way the Seahawks don't just steamroll this one?
They should. This is 2020 though. I mean, shouldn't the Steelers have steamrolled Dallas a few weeks ago and only beat them by 6? So
yeah, Steelers have been winning close.
Yeah, I mean Seattle has been up and down, a bit of a disappointment at times, but yeah, I mean the way that they don't cover in this game is if the running game is so effective and Giants get a couple close touchdowns. Yeah, Seattle wins this game by double-digit points.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like double-digit spreads. Yeah. I like double-digit spread here. New York rolling with Colt McCoy. That being said, that does, Wayne Gallman for the Giants does get volume. It is a bad defensive matchup, and you're not sitting Evan Ingram this week. And I really think it does lend to a positive Sterling Shepard game like we talked about earlier because it's a plus matchup, because the game script is going to lean that way. You disagree?
No, I don't. I think this game goes over 46.5. I think the Giants will have enough opportunity against a bad Seattle team.
Yeah, and
this game has an easy chance to go under, but I like this over.
Yeah, for the Seahawks, Carson, Wilson, Metcalf, and Lockett has had some down weeks since his blow up 200-yard performance. So if you have better options out there, you can lean that way. Just 4 targets last week, 23 yards, 67 and touchdown week before, 66-0 week before. He is still getting target volume. Don't think they have to throw a ton in this one though. So Lockett just, he's probably a wide receiver 3 this week, but there's no way you can set Metcalf. Guy's been on a tear.
Yeah, he's fucking Old Miss, man. Jesus.
Yeah,
they were Brown and DK Metcalf.
A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Jordan Wilkins, Evan Ingram, Jordan Ta'amu. They were loaded during the battle hack.
They still sucked.
Yep.
Whatever.
Patriots, Chargers. Chargers favored by 1, plus 100 odds here. I kind of like the Chargers a bit.
Yeah, I like plus 100 money line. I They've been a bit disappointing. New England kind of back and forth in that playoff spot. This is another good matchup for Herbert to go out there and showcase. I think he had a bit of a down week last. I don't remember which last week or two.
Either
way, he's been.
I'm looking
he's been
it up.
good. He's been good.
He's
at
been
football.
generally good.
The Chargers themselves miscoached as usual. Anthony Lynn should be fired by the end of the year, if not after this game. He'll be one of the.
Last week was a down week, just one touchdown on 316 yards. First non-double-digit touchdown game since week 3.
So I think Herbert's generally a must-play. With how good he's looked in offense as a whole, sometimes it's not pretty, but for fantasy, the guy's been productive. Keenan Allen obviously playing Austin Eckler is basically made everyone else in that backfield a non-factor. And then Hunter Henry, because you have to, and even Mike Williams. Cleveland sucks on offense, but
mash the brakes on Mike Williams a little bit. He had been in a good stretch. Not a good week last week against the Bills, and playing outside going to be a tough week for him against Gilmore, and or J.C. Jackson. So I'm staying away from Mike Williams this week.
That's fair too. So.
Hunter Henry though has been very solid as of late. So you're not, you're absolutely good there. So Eckler, Henry, Herbert, Allen for me on that side of the ball. New England side of the ball. James White has started to turn it on as of late. He has actually been utilized, which is something that he wasn't early on. So I think you're back to a point where you can pretty comfortably plug in James White. Damian Harris is a running back too. 2 touchdowns last week for James White. Touchdowns actually are what saved him last week. Week before he 3 yards. So
he's got it's so weird. 34 catches, less than 300 yards on those. Yeah. For a guy who's pretty dynamic with the football, it just Cam Newton sucks. I'll be really honest about it. Not very good. The offense as a whole has struggled to show that. You'd think it was Jacoby Myers for a little bit, and it looked to be that case. And Demir Byrd getting work. Obviously, N'Keal Harry coming back. James White's heavier involvement in the passing game. And just more involved. Michelle, I'm assuming will have more of a role than what he had last week now. 1 week removed from his injuries and coming back from them.
You're sure about that? You're not?
No. I'm not sure about it at all.
You're not sure
New England.
Sony Michel's they're done with his ass?
I would hope so, but it's New England. And as far as I'm concerned, Bill Belichick is still the coach, and we've seen dumber shit from this. I want to believe more than less that we can continue to ride Damian Harris, and he should. But if James White's going to go out there and for some reason vulture touchdowns in the red zone.
Well, receiving touchdowns. They're not using Harris in the receiving game. Well, they weren't rushing.
No, they were.
They were rushing. That's right.
Yeah, they were both rushing touchdowns.
That's right. So Damian
Harris. It's not him that is Cam Newton. He's got 9 this year.
Right. So, which is why when we talked about Damian Harris a couple weeks ago, we said, but I think it's the best take you can. He is his must start. He is not a running back 1. And I'm
not saying don't play him. I'm just I don't get excited. I wanted to be more excited about Jacoby Myers, but then they just stopped going to him. I'm wondering if more shaded coverage to his way. But Demir Byrd, there should be more points in this game. This is a better offense to play, especially the Chargers can get up early.
Yeah,
I'm just not excited about it.
10-point floor in PPR for Jacoby Myers. I think you're still fine with him as a wide receiver 3-4 type with some upside if they do decide to target him heavily, which we've absolutely seen them do. And Demir Byrd's been the other guy that's been used, but big week before, kind of a down week last week. As far as the Chargers go, taking a look at how they stack up against wide receivers, it's been outside speed guys that have more or less gotten it done. Deshaun Hamilton did have a big week, but beyond that, Aguilar running him outside a lot. Jakeem Grant, Rashad Perriman, Gabe Davis.
So it's a Demir Bird
It's
week,
kind of a Demir Bird type week, it looks like. Emmanuel Sanders, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill. So you are looking more Demir Bird this week. If you're looking for an option, Jacoby Myers should still have floor, but they're both wide receiver 3-4 types. You don't have to play either of them.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Eagles, Packers. Packers are favored by 8.5 in this one, and if they play anything like they did last week or as in sync as they did last week, that's absolutely going to be the case. Outside of Miles Sanders, I don't know that you can do anything from Philly.
Dallas Goddard. That's it.
Ertz was
Sanders.
just activated.
Yeah, I would still play Goddard. I think even before Ertz got hurt, Goddard was still productive. He was the more productive of the two.
He was.
Early on in the season, I think it's just Goddard and Sanders, and hope that Sanders again is entrusted because the Eagles' offense and the team as a whole is just completely fucking dog shit. And they only gave him 6 carries last week on Monday night. And I know Seattle's run defense is better than their pass defense. Sanders has been one of the more productive and heavily efficient backs.
Well, and Green Bay is
Healthy.
very weak against the run as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, it is a plus matchup for Miles Sanders. So,
It is.
Yeah.
We'll see if they can exploit how long they can exploit it.
Yeah.
Wentz has been quiet. I think Wentz is still a QB1 on the year. Despite all the shit that
best
despite
efforts,
despite his best efforts, he's this year's Jameis Winston. There's no high passing volume.
Yeah,
touchdowns and alley rushing production.
Yep, and the wide receiver side of things is just a giant clusterfuck that you can't take any stock in. So
it's annoying and I hate it all.
Yep. As far as the Packers go, Adams Jones, not a great matchup for Jamal Williams. He was able to gash a shorthanded Bears defense decently well, but Philly is better up the middle than what Chicago is without Akeem Hicks. So, it's Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers. If this game is for some reason closer than it should be, can make an argument for Allen Lazard, but he's firmly a wide receiver 4 for me. He's a desperation play that shouldn't kill you. We did see him get some target volume and stuff last week, a bit more so than MVS. But
Rodgers, Jones,
Adams. I say a bit more than
Maybe
MVS. I don't
if
think
you
Valdez Scantling actually played, did he?
I'm not sure. I don't remember. I think he was out there. If he did. He was.
He played. There's just nothing that happened. He didn't do anything.
Also, game script, but Rodgers still. They kept throwing for a while.
They didn't stop throwing. Denver, Kansas City. Kansas City favored by 14 here.
Oof.
Over under is 50.5.
Oof. Well, they're gonna get Drew Lock back.
They will get Drew Lock back. Phillip Lindsay is out. And we'll be relying on Melvin Gordon there.
With a little bit of Royce Freeman. Oh man, what could have been?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how I feel. I don't like 2 touchdown spreads ever. But
there's a lot that still has to go right. It looks easy to predict. You're like, Chiefs can beat him by 3 touchdowns, but all it takes is garbage time. Typically, both teams get up by 2 or 3 touchdowns in the second half. They want to just ride the clock out and not show too much or get their big players hurt. I'm staying away from the spread. Over under, I think, is a trap. I wouldn't bet either.
When you look at Kansas City, they had a good game against the Raiders, but against the Panthers, you didn't ever feel like they were in jeopardy necessarily.
Yeah.
Against the Bucs, you didn't really feel like they were in jeopardy necessarily. Well, I guess against the Panthers, you kind of felt they were in jeopardy. But, they only beat the Panthers by 3. They only beat the Raiders by 4. They only beat the Bucs by 3. They steamrolled through the first half of their schedule. more or less. But like the Steelers, games have started to be played a little bit closer. So I don't like 14 points either. Bring that down to 9 or 10. I'm happy. I don't think Denver wins this game by any stretch of the imagination. It's a money line parlay bet for me. You could take the over here as well if you really want to.
I don't like anything about it. I think the money line's too high, and I think 15.5 is a trap in both directions. It's a lot of reliance on this Broncos offense to put up enough points. And last week, 15.5 wouldn't have gotten it done, I think, against the Bucs. I think it was, 24-21? Maybe it was 27-24. Really went over. I don't know if the Broncos are going to put up enough here to push this game over.
Yep, they did get.
But they could. So,
and they did get beat pretty handily at last go around.
Yeah.
Drew Lock is very, very up and down and inconsistent. 2 interceptions, no touchdowns last game. Drew Lock is a low tier stream. They're gonna have to throw enough to where there's some value there, but with as inconsistent as he's been in the time of the season that you're in most scenarios, you're going to want to leave Drew Lock on your bench. That being said, that does not mean the same for Tim Patrick and Jerry Jeudy. I think both of them have value in a matchup where Denver is going to be playing from behind, and Melvin Gordon being the only running back makes him a locked and loaded running back too. You also Noah Fant because he's a tight end.
Yep.
And it's hard to find 12 tight ends on any given week that are good to start.
I think the fantasy players in this.
Yeah. And the Chiefs are always chalk. You're not going to have to do anything.
Mahomes, Hill, Kelsey.
CEH.
Yeah. Forgot, you got to add in a running back now.
Mm-hmm. So, not a whole lot more to talk about there. Monday Nighter. Bills-Niners. Niners back at full strength. Bills favored by 1.5 here. Negative 130. I like Buffalo by 1.5.
I'm kind of like the Niners, man.
Yeah, at plus 110.
I just I know Buffalo's been good, but San Francisco, when they've been healthy, I know with Garoppolo they're got no Kittle, but their offense as a core is bad. Their top receivers, their running game is there, and their defense is still really good.
What we learned last week is you don't, under any circumstances, sit Deebo Samuel at this point.
No.
Nope. Deebo Samuel's a locked and loaded too. There's going to be volume there from a Niners standpoint. And then you look at, that pretty much covers the receiving game. Brandon Ayuk was activated. Problem with that is that I don't know that we've seen Ayuk give you a locked and loaded. Yes, I'm happy with that performance with him and Deebo healthy because they've both been in and out of the lineup so much. Deebo's alpha for me.
Yep, I agree. You're going to play Mostert because he just seems to be the guy that if there's going to be one back that blows up, it's him.
Yeah. Nope, I don't disagree with that. Mostert got in a win last week. I believe Mostert was your lead rusher.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. 16 attempts, by and far lead rusher. So you're definitely going to play him. And that's pretty much it. Really, from the Niners. They play better as a team. Those are the only guys that you can really super rely on, though. As far as the Buffalo Bills go, that is a little bit more interesting because I think that there was an argument to where Gabe Davis has upside. It's a tough matchup, though. So
yeah.
He's in that wide receiver 3-4 range to where if you have to have somebody to play, there is upside to Gabe Davis because he does get targeted downfield. He's not getting a ton of volume. The safe plays here, Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, Devin Singletary.
Yeah, I think Singletary had season low, and he just gets. I don't trust him or Moss.
He had over 100 scrimmage yards last week.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Again, a tougher matchup. I don't expect that efficiency to be there. They're probably playing him anyways, and may not feel great about it, but obviously you're playing Josh Allen. He's coming off of a rookie season type of performance. But either way, that's why he's still a very productive fantasy quarterback. Stephon Diggs, obviously you can't sit. No John Brown, so I do like Gabe Davis more. And going to be basically flipping a bottle cap between us for points. I think Singletary will have the most touches, but I'll give the touchdown lead.
Yeah, because Moss is getting goal line. So, yeah, they're both flex value. We'll call
They were
it.
both productive last week, but Terry was able to be productive.
Sure. All right, that is all all we have for you this week. So, wish you the best of luck. I will maybe be here on Sunday. We're still at that point where I don't really know when things are going to happen. So, if we're not here on Sunday, if I'm not here on Sunday, there's no expectation that Nick will do a show on his own. He's jumping in to help us out.
I am off this Sunday.
Okay, so Dan will be here Sunday regardless.
I'll be here. Hopefully, but yeah, I'll be here.
Okay. I may not be. We will see.
Yeah. Well.
All right. Cool. Thank you guys very much for tuning in, and yeah.
We'll see you Sunday morning or next week.
Somebody will see you Sunday morning, maybe.
That's right.
Or next week, or maybe. We'll see. We'll let you know.
Yep.